Okay, so today we're gonna do cinnamon rolls. So this is roughly about 4 pounds of dough right here. And so I sort of get my shape into a rectangle. And the important things in your cinnamon rolls is that you wanna have it long enough this way. So if you have less dough, like for example, here's 2 pounds, it doesn't really matter because it's gonna be the same height this way. So it's gonna be less wide, the same length here. And that's how you get your rings. So the deal at House of Bread is that it's got to have 3 rings. And why is that important? Because people want cinnamon rolls for the butter and the brown sugar, right? They're not really that interested in bread dough. And so I've got a pretty big rolling pin. It's not sticking to the table. If it was, I'd just put a little flour underneath it. And then I re-grab it, take control of it, and I'm going to shape again. And notice how it's thinner over here and thicker over here. That's not going to look good in a cinnamon roll, right? So I want it consistent. And so it should be all the same height on these guys. And it's really about a ½ inch. And I've got a little ruler and I'm going to measure it. And so out of 4 pounds, these are going to be our plain cinnamon rolls. And out of 4 pounds, you just times it times 3, so whatever pounds you have. So 4 pounds is going to get you 12 cinnamon rolls. And if your cinnamon roll dough is fighting you, go find something else to do and come back to it. Because then it'll relax a little bit and allow you to roll it out. And so for those of you making cinnamon rolls at home, you want to just find a flat surface. So I've got a nice, baker's table, but you don't really need that. I mean, you can use granite, you can use, whatever your counter is. Okay, so now we're looking pretty good. So what I want you to keep in mind here, this is a consistent rectangle. And the key thing is that's going to allow for a consistent log, and then you're going to cut it, and your cinnamon rolls all going to be the same. Why is that important? Because 1, people expect the cinnamon rolls to look the same day after day, but 2, it'll allow it to bake properly. So if you have smaller cinnamon rolls and bigger cinnamon rolls, the smaller ones are going to get overbaked by the time the bigger ones get baked. Okay, so what I do is I kind of put my elbow to my fingertips here, and that's how I know that this is long enough. But I will measure it just kind of for kicks and giggles. And what it is it's pretty much about 20 inches. And all nice and consistent all the way to the end. Okay, so now I'm going to put my butter on. Now you can use a pastry brush, but quite frankly that takes too long. So just dump some butter on there. And then I spread it all the way to the ends. For whatever reason, sometimes people don't. And then it tastes too much like bread. Okay, so now here's my brown sugar and cinnamon mixture. Okay, this is a 16:1. And what I mean by that, it's like 1 gallon, which is 16 cups, to 1 cup of cinnamon. Or for home, you're not going to make that much. So what you want to do is, it's like a cup of brown sugar, which is 16 tablespoons, to 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. Okay, so now notice how I go all the way to the ends once again, because I want to get all that goodness. Okay, here's the key point. And this has too much brown sugar and cinnamon on it. Okay, so why is that significant? Is because it'll taste dry. Okay, so you don't want dry cinnamon roll. So there's also too much of a good thing. So all you have to do is just gather this up with your hands, and it doesn't stick, okay? Whatever doesn't stick, you put back in your brown sugar cinnamon mixture because you don't want dry cinnamon rolls. Okay, so now I got all that out of there. And notice I'm grabbing it from the ends here. But here's what people do. They roll it up like this. And guess what happens when you roll it up like this? You get funky little shapes like that. So you don't do that. You roll it out from the ends, and you lift up, and you roll. Okay? So I'm just lifting up, and I'm rolling. Okay, so this is what I call our log. And I grab it like so. It's not a fingertip thing because it takes you forever and you don't really have strength in your fingertips. So just grab it. Okay, and then seam side down. Okay? And now I'm gonna grab a knife. Brian's gonna get me a knife, please. And we're gonna cut this. And I want you to notice that this is one consistent size. So if it was bigger over here, let's say it's bigger right here, then I just sort of squeeze it. I want you to hit the heads up too. Because now I've got one consistent log. And then, like I said, this is 4 pounds, so I'm gonna get 12 out of here. So it's easy for me to do this. You can kind of go by half pretty easily. And then I can put it right next to here. And I know that I need to get 6 out of each one. So I can even cut these in half. Right? And then I'm gonna get 3 out of each one. So I want you to notice the rings in here. See how that is? And look at all of them. All of them are very consistent. And this is what we're going for. So at home, you don't have to be that consistent. It's not as big of a deal. But I can tell you in retail, you have to be. Okay, so now, when I cut the cinnamon rolls, I kind of hold it up like a little bit. And so the reason I do that is because, that's our oven timer, by the way. And I want it to, I don't want this. Okay, that kind of smashes it. Right, so you just chop like that, okay? And then we're gonna place these on the pan. And they're gonna prove a little longer. And let's say this one's kind of thicker, right? Well, here's how we do a little surgery. You pull the bottom off of that one, and I'll show you what I'm gonna do with my pan. I just put it on the bottom. Okay, so you could make it there, and you never know. And one other thing to note is that I am spacing them out on the pan. Because if you put them right next to each other, they're not going to bake as well. Because they're going to grow a little bit, and then they're also going to have some oven spring. Okay. Okay, so I wanted to show you something here which is kind of common. I've got a little flyaway here, and it's also a little bit bigger. So since I want to keep it kind of consistent, I'm going to pull that off of here, tuck that underneath there, and kind of flatten them out. And then this guy here is kind of smaller, so I'm going to put it on there. And look, now it looks really good. And then if it starts flying away on you too much, you can just tuck those underneath there. But we really don't do that because it takes it takes more time to sit here and monkey around with it. So we're done with these. So these guys are going to proof. Okay, now we do nuts and raisins.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're not quite open, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. We open at 7.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll be on that.
Great. Yes, this is early morning and it's dark. And it is about an hour before we open. Because I got to get my cinnamon rolls out of the oven before we open. Okay, so this is going to be nuts and raisins. So it's the same concept. You roll it out, and it's got to be the same length this way. And the reason that is significant, again, is because I want to get enough rings in my cinnamon rolls. All right, and it's consistent this way, right? And it's just shorter this way because this is only 2 pounds. Okay, so I got my butter, and then my brown sugar. And it's significant that I do the plain cinnamon roll first, because I don't want to get people affected by the nuts, because these are going to have nuts and raisins on them. And so you want to keep in mind that people have nut allergies. Okay, so once again, I gather up the extra cinnamon because I don't want dry cinnamon rolls. Put it back. Okay, so if we're doing plain cinnamon rolls, we just grab it by the ends and roll it up. But we're not doing plain cinnamon rolls. Okay, so we've got walnuts. And so what I do, here's my walnuts. I put 2/3 walnuts. And then I do 2/3 raisins. So I'm going to get raisins, and then I'm going to get nuts and raisins. And so one thing to a note, you know, at home, if you want to do chocolate chips, I mean, it doesn't really matter. If you want to do dried apples, whatever you want to use. But you want to limit it, the amount. So I've got it a nice, I call it don't overlap. What I mean by that is that you have nuts and raisins in here, but I don't want like a big, huge, like for example, that's too much raisins, right? So you can't overlap them. No doubling up basically on that. Okay, so now if you look at this, I'm going to get, this is 2 pounds of dough, so I need 6 cinnamon rolls. So I'm going to specifically look where my nuts are, and then here's my raisins. Get out of there, nut. Now, if people have nut allergies, we tell them just to get the plain cinnamon rolls for obvious reasons. Okay, so now I lift and roll it because I want all that goodness of those raisins staying in there. Lift and roll. Okay, I'm going to get 2 out of that. And now I get that raisin out of my nut. And people don't have raisin allergies, but at the same time is that not everybody likes raisins. Okay, so then I get my nuts. There we go. Then we just cut these in 2s, and then we're good to go. And I think one other point to make on this is that if I'm going to bake these cinnamon rolls with the nuts and raisin cinnamon rolls, I want to space them out about the same distance apart because I had, let me show you what one person did, a little bit smaller. Is they spaced out like this, and so they spaced them out like this, and what happened is that these would bake 5 minutes quicker because it had more hot air around it. So you want to space them out about the same as your other ones. And I put the like product together just because it's easier for retail to come apart. So your raisins. Okay, so now I've got one of them that's just a little smaller. Actually, they all look pretty good. I got some extra dough here. So I look for kind of the smallest one. I'll probably say it's this guy. So I just put that underneath there. Okay. And now we're ready to off to bake, and it's going to be about 25 minutes.